Right, I've got the camera in the right place. I'm eating some walnuts. Nearly finished. I'll start on Periscope. Finished. So Facebook Live is nice. They stopped that for a while. They started it again, but with Facebook Live, you get lots of people watching. They're always your friends. You don't get anybody new. So overall, I'll use this for now. I never get really people watching live on like Periscope because YouTube's not really considered a live medium, but at least it's something which is down there and people can watch afterwards, which I normally do it for. It's just easy to record it live and save me uploading it afterwards. So more stories. And the thing about counselling is that you learn about yourself by talking about yourself. So the more you talk about yourself, the more you discover and see the patterns and everything and the routines. Yes, but see, I've got an audience here, my cat's watching me. So when you're watching your own videos just to see what they like, you think, well, I've obviously been into nostalgia all my life. My memories began when I was very young. Oh, trying to get in front of the camera here and the chair nearly fell over. Do it the opposite way to the way it's supposed to go. There we go. So my earliest memories of 1961 when we still had trolley buses, and all the roads around here were quite different. Main roads, traffic lights and crossroads. Now they've got flyovers. A roundabout where there's now traffic lights. And all the designs, all the cars, the Rileys and the Ford Prefects and Populars, Hillman Minks, Ford Zephyrs, Zodiacs. I remember all those Vauxhall Crestas and Victors. They were just the ordinary cars. Everything was standardised. We had the old little card train tickets and the buses were all route masters. There was nothing else except a single decker. And things were nice and simple then. Very few people charged for parking. And all the sweets and chocolates were much bigger bars, much bigger biscuits. And a lot of the best sweets and chocolates and desserts have stopped being made now. So things don't always get better. They just narrow down the choice over time. So nostalgia and philosophy, because I learn about life and recognise patterns and then try and learn from it to improve things for me and everyone else. If I can explain what I've learned, it saves other people working it out. And of course, ideally, I want to entertain and amuse people, because if it's not entertaining and they're bored, there's nothing to watch really, because it's dull. People just go off it. So when I'm telling stories, I try not to slip into accents unless I'm doing a particular person who had an accent. And of course, if somebody's got an accent, I will always talk as them in that accent, sometimes 10 times stronger than it really is, because you're going to do them properly. Of course, all the people in the local shops all have the same accent. They had done for the last 40 years. We had shops at the end of our road in my old place. North end, they were all Indian by the 80s, and the south end, half of them were Indian by the 90s. Most of the shops now, they are Indian. I remember there were Jewish people running some of the shops around here when I used to live where I am now, in the 60s, before we moved and I came back. I used to go in a complete circle. My hairdresser was Jewish, the dry cleaner was Jewish. Who else? Oh, a chemist, yeah. So things all changed. I can't think of anywhere outside Jewish restaurants now where the Jewish people work. All the clothes shops used to be Jewish in Golders Green, as they would be, I suppose. Of course, there's Gold's there. That's the one surviving Jewish shop. So I've grown up in Golders Green all my life, because apart from very short stays elsewhere, I've always been within a few miles of Golders Green. West of it, north of it, I've always been within one short bus ride, a hop to Golders Green, 15-minute journey at the most. So wherever else I've been, everything congregates in Golders Green. The station was the place where we would always meet. We've got our own Facebook group. We've had 300 or 400 people at international meetups here, coming back especially to meet all their friends after 40 years. But it's great. So, you know, some of them are still there. The Bar Linda, the little cafe in the station, is still there, and they still do the best sandwiches for miles around. I tried one recently and I was absolutely right, they are. And up till not that long ago, some of the shops were still there. They've all pretty much fizzled out now. But Finchley Road, going up north towards Henley's Corner, I was in one of the shops a few years ago, and the two of us, the shopkeeper and one of the customers and me, worked out virtually every shop from the top to the bottom of the road in the 70s. What was there before, and some of them were still there. I've worked in about 3 of them because there was always plenty of jobs available. I had one job for 5 years in Finchley Road in Temple Fortune, one for a couple of weeks before it was no good and I got the sack. One an estate agent for I was no good, got the sack. But it, you know, prepared me for real life and the world to get qualified, because when you're being treated like dirt as a teenager by these bosses who've got qualifications, you think, well, the only way I'm going to get anywhere in life is to get qualified. So I was determined to do all I could to pass my exams at the second time, because I failed them the first time and finally did. So carried on teaching after that and studying to be a psychotherapist. I have to say it's one of the most competitive jobs in the entire country, because firstly, there's no regulations by law, so anybody can do it without any qualifications. There won't be an official membership or anything, but they do seem to get work and are allowed to do it, whereas those of us who spent the average 3 years studying to get our psychotherapy qualifications, there are too many. When I started in 1986, there were 3 universities or colleges doing it around London. Now every college does it. I had to go 12 miles or something to get to college to do it every week, because there was nowhere nearby. Now everyone's doing it. They're turning loads of them out, but they haven't got enough work. So it was a nice practical thing to do, and it helps people. I like doing it, but very difficult to get enough people to earn a living from it. I'll tell you that now. Got to do other things. So I stuck to bookkeeping. I was going to be an accountant, and one thing you do is in your years of accountancy is you learn how to keep books. So whatever else you pass or fail, like counselling, you don't need to be qualified. Anyone can do bookkeeping, just if they know what they're doing, because the accountant checks it afterwards. So you're going to have some biscuits. Yeah, I know what it's like. No, it's the water. Hopefully I'll have some biscuits afterwards, one or the other. So yeah, the counselling is a great job. After about 10 to 15 years, I think I felt confident enough if I ever felt like teaching it at university, but I never bothered to look. Just do individual tuition, because that's what I did before in law. And I can do tuition in law and in counselling for students who are often more qualified than me, but not in counselling, because they're academics and I'm professional. They're learning their skills, so I'm teaching them to do it, which is nice. And well, when you get to a certain age, of course, you do clock up all sorts of experience. And after a few, more than a few interviews and knocking on doors and attempts, I got a lovely job in a youth club as my placement. I was there for about 3 years, once or twice a week. And I will say that apart from the fact that I wouldn't call it authority, because we have very limited authority or power. Guidance, that's what I was doing. I was guiding them. I was there to guide them, not to, you know, because they were there for fun and leisure. They weren't there to work. So I was just there to guide them and give them something to do and be there for them to tell me their problems, because that was my role there as a youth worker, to look after. As a pastoral role, you learn a hell of a lot as a youth worker. And the great thing about youth work is that at the time, I was probably only 10 years older than the average customer there. So I wasn't that much older. I was still in my 20s, and it was just like being in a youth club myself. So, you know, after I got used to it, I mean, there were 5 staff, I think, on average, and we all got on great, all the different staff. Sometimes go and visit them at home, and don't think we ever had a chance to go out to eat or anything in the local Star Burger at the end of the road. Let's go there every week after my video meeting afterwards, but we were too busy working, I think. Didn't get a chance. We didn't finish till 10 and it was too late to go out. So I like the youth work so much, I used to go on the extra night when I wasn't required to go there, because I like going there. So quite frequently I'll go there on a Thursday as well as a Tuesday, because you know, they didn't mind, because I was helping them out. And the great thing was, after about a year or so, somebody left and I was given their job and started getting paid, because I was volunteer to start with. So it does help to do these internships, because you've got so much experience on your CV and so many other things. Of course, 30 years later, I'm writing about youth crime. Well, when you've done projects on youth crime as a graduate student in your 20s, of course, when you're a graduate student in your 60s, and you've got 3 years experience of dealing with youth crime in a youth club, because that was one of our great themes, petty crime. I mean, one day, because the youth club was in a huge car park for all the local shops, and somebody had removed various aerials off the cars. We knew who had done it, more or less, and he knew we knew who had done it. And he was a sweet little bloke. He was perfectly harmless, really, but I think he just wanted the attention. He wasn't one of the buggers there. He was a laugh. We always got on very well. And one day, a few months later, him and his mates, who were only about 14 or 15, thought they would see what it's like to be a real tough guy. So they went up to Holloway Road, to one of the pubs there, and they witnessed some genuine people who were tough guys, grown up tough guys, being tough guys, and they ended up running down Holloway Road scared for their bowels. And they came and told us that I think we realise now some of our aspirations were a little bit off, because this is what can really happen. I said to him, I said, once one of their houses got burgled, and I said, well, you know, once you've been on the end of it, that's the last thing you want for other people. You know, you don't want to steal from other people. You know, it's like being stolen from. You've got to be like a father to them, really, and just bring them up the way their parents might not bring them up, because they're a bit dodgy. So these are sort of things you learn when you are younger. I always worked with kids, because when I was 16, I began babysitting for the neighbours, which I did for at least, how long did I do that for? 15 years, probably. Yeah, till I was about 30. It was one of those things where everyone recommends you. So I had loads of customers. So I could do 2 or 3 nights a week babysitting for most of my 20s, my teenage years. And when I was on holiday, I was the babysitter there for a year or two, because all the parents would go out and need somebody to look after their kids at night. So I was on the rota. You either do one family or 2 or 3 families and take it in turns, depending how busy you were. And I was a teacher, so I was with teenagers all day, or most of the day, and a youth worker. So didn't have children of my own, but I think I know probably as much or more about children than a lot of parents do, because I've worked with them from birth to adulthood. Because I've had all sorts of very young babies that I had to well, I mean, half the time they were asleep, but I'll tell you what, it's like a fireman, that if the alarm goes off, you've got to do everything. So you're sitting there and the alarm goes off, and, you know, potty, poo, wee, bottle, whatever it is. And one of them, the woman didn't really look after her house. So I ended up doing her cleaning as well. And she had like 20 bottles of milk. And I'd had to put them all in the sink and wash them out for the next lot, because I think either she didn't bother to breastfeed, or he was too old for breastfeeding, but it was all this bloody formula milk. So I think we did about 2 bottles per evening, but I had to wash about 20 of them for the rest of the day, that she could have for the rest of the time I wasn't there. Oh, you learn an awful lot in life doing these assorted jobs. So that's my early work life, all the different regular jobs I did, plenty of other irregular jobs, mainly warehouse removals type work. So our friend had a warehouse. He still does if he's alive, and he still does because if he died, his partner's got it, but it's still there. And in the end, after dropping 2 large items of furniture, I said, I will stay in the office. Oh, you get paid more for the lorries. I said, I know, we suffer for it, thank you. So I was back on orders instead of removals. And the van drivers, they found the orders in the office very boring. He wanted to go out and do removals. They said, well, you do the removals and I'll stay in the office. It was a shame because they got a lorry after that. And it was because he used to hire lorries for the big jobs, but he was doing so well, he got his own lorry and I was entitled to drive it because it wasn't outside the license I've got. But I finished by then. So I never got a chance to drive the big truck, but I will live. I always drove a Luton, which is a medium-sized truck, but this was a proper lorry, which was just within the driving license so that you can drive it. I didn't drive the large lorry cab either because, funny enough, both the places I worked in, the one when I was outside London, they had a lorry school in the car park. And they said to me, oh, you come up at the weekend, you can drive a lorry. I said, I wish I could, but I go to London and teach at the weekends. So I couldn't do that. And the place in Wembley, where it is now, the other one, also had the lorry school, but I never got to know them because I was too busy in the place doing whatever I was doing. So I never got a chance to drive a proper lorry, which was a shame, but we can't do everything. So I've driven an underground train. Not only driven an underground train, I've taken it into the station. And the amazing thing is that you only have that 3 buttons on an underground train. So I was in the front of the underground train. I think what I used to do, because you would tend to go in the carriage which was nearest the exit when you got home, so you wouldn't have to walk up the platform. So it's probably why I was in the front at the time. I was on my own, and there was this Italian or something bloke, young chap driving the train. And he saw I was on my own, and he said, "Can you come in the cab?" I said, "Oh, great." So he says, "You can drive the train." I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, look, that's front, that's go. Those are the well, you don't really open the doors because the guard opens the doors. You have to wave or something, or press a button to tell him to do it at the other end of the train. And that handle there is the accelerator." So he said to me, "We're going at the moment, and in about a minute or two, we'll be coming into Camden Town Station. And when I tell you, turn the accelerator like 50% round, then the train will slow down. And then as soon as you see the platform, gradually turn it the other quarter until it's at 3 o'clock, and that will stop the train at the end." So, obviously he does this every 5 minutes when he's stopping in a station. So, it's down at the left to go fully, then see the station, turn it round to the top to 12 o'clock, and the train slows down. And he says, when the cab gets to the end, when you're getting towards the last 3 carriages, just gently take it round to the end, and the train slowed to a halt. And I stopped it right at the end of the platform, and the doors opened. He said, "Well done, you just parked a train in the station." I did a lovely job because it was very simple things. I have driven a train, so that was something, and parked it in the station, which is like landing a plane. It's the posh bit because anybody can do the autopilot, but it's just moving. So, I've actually practically manipulated a train, which is far easier than landing a jumbo jet, obviously. So that was the one thing I did do. And of course, seems like 5 minutes. I've been on for nearly 20 minutes. It's amazing, isn't it? And I've been on Big Brother. That was, I have so many dreams that I'm in Big Brother. And because it's up the road from, I've told this story before, but it's just, talking about the things that I've done at my grandmother's on a Friday night when the Big Brother final was. I realised I was 10 minutes away from the studio. So I said, I'm going to go up the studio soon if I can see any of them. And I did, because they had their party on the patio, which is tent, which looks out onto the road, and it's got a big plastic window at the front so you can see everybody. So I went the second time, and they were all on the lawn chatting with us. And after about half an hour, they came out with the camera and filmed all of us, and we all chatted, and they filmed it. And I didn't speak because they chopped that bit out, but they saw me talking to one of them and shaking his hand, but they had his reply to me. They, for some reason, they edited out what I said to him, which was a bit silly because the conversation didn't make sense. Went to the gym the next day. The whole entire staff came running up to me, "You were in Big Brother, you were in Big Brother." I mean, that is the power of the media right there. So I think if I'd spoken on it as well, you know, I'd have had people ring me up. "Oh, we heard you on Big Brother. It's amazing." Because I think it was it that year or another year where I went to be in the audience for the eviction. They didn't say turn up early or anything. They just get there for 8:30 or whatever it was. It was late filming. So there's a long queue of hundreds of us. You know, we all had tickets. You know, we all got tickets, free tickets, and they counted the queue. And they got to the 200 or something. So, right, we're full. Some bugger next to me come all the way from Sheffield. So they had a journalist there from The Sun who interviewed us all. We all said we'd given up a bloody evening to come to the Big Brother eviction with tickets, and we didn't realise it was the first 200, and there was about 400 people there. So luckily I got in it by chance and not by planning. So, you know, if you're patient enough, you do actually sometimes get a lucky break. So that was one of my lucky breaks. Another lucky break, I used to go to the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre in Guildford to have their lovely tea and cakes there. They've got a very good cafe. We noticed Kate O'Mara and Ian Lavender on the next table. And it turns out that the cafe there is used by all the actors as well. They don't have their own place. They sit in the big public foyer, and then what's his name from Hello Hello? The little bloke with the glasses. I'll get his name eventually. So I'm looking at Chris again. Hello. So the programme had the next 3 months performances. Says, "Oh my God, guess who's going to be in a couple of weeks? Patrick Stewart." I'm going to go up there when Patrick Stewart starts and see if he comes out. So I turned up on Patrick Stewart Day. I can't remember whether my father or I spotted that bit of business going on, a bit of activity going on in the theatre, because all the theatre doors are at the back of the cafe, so you can walk through into the theatre. It's a cafe attached to the theatre for the intervals and before and after. So I put my head round. It was all dark on the thing. The stage was lit up, and the whole cast, including Sue Johnson from Brookside and Patrick Stewart, were rehearsing. They were actually doing what they call blocking out, I think, which is where they X marks the spot. They all have to stand on the stage, and the director decides, who's in a little box, whether they can be seen by the audience, because there are certain places there where they couldn't be seen in the corners. So, I mean, you think they'd know every week because they're all the same. "Hello, Joe, I'm all right." Same story as usual. So basically, they had to draw these chalk lines or imaginary chalk lines on the stage and say, "Don't go beyond there because the people on the left can't see you." You'd think they'd know that by then. So they're all pacing up and down doing their spots, and it was so hot I had to leave after a while because it was the hottest day of the year. But you know, he was my favourite Star Trek character, Picard. So I saw him. Then I went back a few weeks later and saw, as far as I know, the only person who's been in my two favourite programmes or soap operas, Crossroads and then Neighbours. That was so bad with names when I'm tired, but I'm sure you'll get it. Sure you'll get it. Anne Charleston, Harold Madge. She came to England after they killed her off in Neighbours and worked in Crossroads with Miss Luke before she retired. And not Amy Turtle, she's already retired or died by then. Anyway, unlike Picard, who was on the deck, you know, on the stage, doing his work on the bridge, Make It So #1, I was sitting in the audience, and the director spotted me. He said, "Oi, you, fuck off." No, he said, "Oi, you, get out." I said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realise I wasn't supposed to be here. Excuse me." Anyway, Anne Charleston said, "I'm going off for a drink. Where's the cafe?" I think she said. And I toddled up to her and I said, I'll show you to the cafe, dear. Here it is. Just out. So it probably only just started that day. She didn't know geography. So I walked her to the cafe and said, you know, I so much, yes, okay. I think you probably got one. I so much enjoyed watching you on Neighbours and Crossroads. It was such a shame to see Crossroads. She said, oh, I know, I really miss it, she said. I said, oh, well, I must get your autograph, as you say. So I did. So unlike the first visit, I may have been slung out after a few minutes watching the second rehearsal, but I got to meet one of the cast too, who again was one of my great people that I watched. Now, what I used to do is I used to write to actresses that I fancied. And the funny thing is that two of them, well, one of them I deliberately wrote to because my father saw her on the bus and said, well, you know that woman you like on the TV, she was on the 102. It turns out she only lived up the road, so that was our local bus. Other people saw her on the 102 as well, so I wrote to her and she said, oh, I'm in the Hampstead Theatre next week, you must buy a ticket and meet me there. And it turned out that when I went to the Hampstead Theatre to meet her there, it was party night. So after the well, I met her beforehand and she said, well, we're having a cast party after the after the performance, so you're invited to our party. So with Miss Moneypenny from James Bond, not the usual one, she did a few of them, the blonde one, just got the part. David Threlfall, who was a great storyteller like me, and he sat on the chair telling stories most of the evening. And Dinsdale Landon didn't mix with other actors. He went home. So we saw him in the play, but he didn't. He had a great time. And because, of course, she was in the theatre for quite a few days, a week or two, I was a very naughty boy and I used to turn up a few times at the end of the show and meet her as she came out because I was in love with her. He says, oh, you're in love with me, aren't you? I said, well, of course, but she's married. What can you do? But she was a lovely woman. I got to know her, got a lovely picture of us together in Fresh Fields. She's dead now, unfortunately. That was Anne Beach. And then I wrote to a woman who was in Crossroads, who was also in May to December, a bit older than me, but very attractive. And again, she says, oh, come and see me at May to December. So that was free because it was BBC. So I went to my first live film. I've been to the BBC with my grandpa a few times, but not to watch a live programme, only to see them rehearsing. So we got tickets for that. So at the end of the show, I went round the back of the green room, as it is, which is just basically the back of the studio. I don't even think it was a separate room. A bit of curtain or something between it. And I don't shit on my doorstep, only the cat does that. So I met her, and Anton Rogers was there with his family who had come to see him. He says, hello, David, shook my hand. Poor bloke died not that long afterwards, so I was very lucky to meet him, as I did with Bill Haley as well, who come all the way from America, and in some of his final years did a great performance at the Victoria Palace, so I saw him live. You know, because he's had his biscuits now. Good boy. So, you know, I've seen quite a few people, and of course the relatively most recent one was Harry Hill, because he was filming on the local green for 3 days, and day 2 I turned up in the afternoon and he invited me on the set, and within 2 minutes, because he was directing, he'd got his director's box, this little woman comes up and says, oi, get off the fucking set. She didn't, she just, oi, get off the set. So even though the bloody director had just told me to go on the set and watch, she cleared me off. So I went all of 3 feet off the set and watched it from 3 feet off the set, stupid woman. And then when the scene had finished, I gave him my autograph book, and he actually looked through the whole thing to see whose autographs I'd got. He was fascinated by it. And I said to him, I very rarely go to performances, but I went all the way to Putney in 1998 or something, or 1999, whenever it was, to see him, and it was cancelled. He says, well, I'm very sorry. Death in the family. I said, it's all right. Well, I suppose out of the 2 of them, I knew your act anyway from the TV, but getting to meet you is a whole different thing. So he says, come back tomorrow. So I came back and spent some of the afternoon with him the next day. And John Thompson from The Fast Show was in it, and he was off at the time and having his tea with his daughter. telling his daughter all about the business. I said, well, you've got a studio audience here. It's only me. He gave me the dirtiest look I've ever had. I thought, well, he's a nice bloke, isn't he? So unlike a great gentleman, Arthur Mullard, who, you see, I used to go to Hampstead a lot, and all the stars lived in Hampstead. And we were up at Whitestone Pond one day, and Arthur Mullard and his wife were on the only bench with any space on it. Do you mind if we sit here? Oh, of course you could sit here. Go on, go ahead, away. Very nice, friendly bloke, Arthur Mullard. So we sat next to Arthur Mullard, and we parked our car in Windsor once, and my father was getting his money out to, what was he getting his money out to pay? I can't remember, but next door there's another man who was fishing through his pockets, and he only had £20 note. He says, you've got change of 20, I can't pay for the car park. It was Russ Abbott. And I said, no, we haven't either. I said, there's a little man at the door over there. I'm sure he'll do it. So I went off to the little man at the door. So I spoke to Russ Abbott. So, you know, unplanned. Don't look behind. No, I'm looking to the cat. The reason I'm looking away is because the cat's down there. Normally I would look forward, but he keeps distracted. Don't you, Victor? I keep going to see the cat. So you get very upset if I didn't make a fuss of it. Think, well, I was going back to sit on the bed now. So he can watch me. That's why I was looking there, because I was a pussy cat watching him to see what he was up to. Yes, he goes on the bed, he says, meow. Tell me he's gone on the bed, so I can go and stroke him. So I've met some nice people, and the nicest of all, I think I haven't told everyone about this for at least 10 minutes. I was in Portobello Road Market with my father in 1974, I think, and he gave me a poke, and he pointed, he says, look over there, look over there. And there was Liberace in a fur coat with his mother. And I did not hesitate. I went over and said, oh my goodness, good to see you. He says, hi there, how are you? Well, what a lovely man. He was literally delighted that a fan went up and went to see him. So from the night, I was so flabbergasted that he came out of the blue that I forgot to ask him for his autograph. It didn't matter, because at least I know I've met him. My father knows I've met him, and most of all important, he knows I met him. So that was that one. My first ever autograph was in a book fair. So I used to go to book fairs because I'm an intellectual, you see, with my mother in the West End, and she's Bloomsbury, I think it was, near the West End. And she says, same thing, over there. And Clement Freud was standing surrounded by people. So being 8 years old or so, I had a programme. I said, excuse me, sir, can I have your autograph? Oh, no problem at all. Thank you very much. So, thank you. And that was before I had my autograph. I got that when I was about 11. I got two, one for me, one for my friend Andrew, who still got it. And I probably kept it in a drawer somewhere, but didn't cut it out and stick it in my autograph book. And then there was B.B. King, who, to be quite fair, I didn't know who he was. I was at a music fair, because my grandpa was a musician, so we went to music fairs, and I went with him. And of course, all the big musicians were there. He says, oh, come up and meet B.B. King, this big guy with curly black hair and big leather hat. Hi there, how are you? Oh, nice to meet you, everything. And afterwards, I realised what a big star he was. He was actually a bloody good blues musician, so that was nice to meet him. Of course, my grandpa wasn't interested in fame and fortune. He wanted to be a good guitarist. And, you know, he played with all the top people. Frank Sinatra got to #1 a couple of times with Winifred Atwell, but he couldn't care less. He said, oh, I got to #2, so what? You know, could have been #1. They made a mistake. He was the only person ever to be mistaken for #1, because the BBC computer was not working. So I think we were on holiday. I think it was in August or something when we went on holiday. Somebody rang me up when I got home and said, oh, your grandpa was #1. And I checked up. And what happened was the chart show, and now #1, Manuel and the Music of the Mountains, and he was the soloist. So, you know, the entire tune was him in the band, but he was a guitarist who played the music. And then half an hour later, they said, we're very sorry, that was a mistake. Something else is #1. I think you were #2. So at least he made #1 at least once with Winifred Atwell, even though you only saw him in the film. Not that they made many films then, they didn't do many music videos, but He did it with Eamon Andrews, I think, in 1958. That was #1. So that came up on YouTube some years ago, which was nice to see them. And it meant that I was working much harder to learn Winifred Atwell style piano, which is virtually impossible. Cat's always in charge. So Russ Conway, of course, is basically simplified Winifred Atwell. So I can just about now imitate Russ Conway, because none of it was written down. You've got to do it by ear. But Winifred Atwell was like Oscar Peterson. She put in notes that you need 3 hands and 5 people to play, and only Oscar Peterson and Winifred Atwell can play that stuff. So I wouldn't even believe it was worth aiming for. Whereas Russ Conway, you do it, build it up in layers. You learn the tune, then you learn basic harmonies, then you listen to all the extra notes and layer it up till you remember it all. So I'm just about on top of that now, even in E flat, because he changes key. It's not that difficult, really, and you get used to it. So that's the fame and fortune thing. So I always say, firstly, I don't want to be in the audience watching the stage. I want to be on the stage being watched by the audience. And second, no, it wasn't the official #1. They had to change it. He was #1 in the 50s, but not in his name. He was accompanying. But this one was #1 actually as a soloist. He was leading the solo, but got to #2. He couldn't care less. So what? Because I'm not here to be well known or get to #1. I just want to do my job and do it well and do it better. He was a perfectionist. Some of us are interested in fame, and he wasn't the slightest bit concerned. To him, old Frank Sinatra, I'm just doing a job, it could be anybody. Spike Milligan, well, he's my friend, we worked together, so what's Spike Milligan? He was with the Goons, my grandpa, he was their guitarist. They had a band, but if they recorded, he played the guitar or the banjo or the ukulele, whatever they were playing in the background. So he did lots of work with the Goons and used to have lunch with Spike Milligan on Shepherd's Bush Green in between, takes. He lived locally, he lived in North Finchley, he used to write rude letters to the paper the whole time, and always complaining about the bins, and the local started campaigning. Great resident he was. Never met him though. Humphrey Littleton was not a neighbour, he was in Finchley. I saw him in a shop once. He looked very old. At least he was alive, because he died after that. Paul McCartney, he's still not far away, and the Beatles too. The Beatles sent their kids to my school, so I saw Paul McCartney coming for the interviews to take his stepdaughter to come to my school, but I never met her because I sort of got left by the back door, dishonourable discharge from the school. So I never met the Murraydale. I've met Murraydale many times since then, but not in my school class. I met Jim Dale, his father, because he came to do the same thing. As he wasn't Paul McCartney, we all went up and said, "Oh, hello, sir, please we have your autograph?" "Oh, of course, nice to see you." He was a lovely bloke, Jim Dale, very friendly, just like he's on the Carry On films. So we met him. Paul McCartney, we just stood there. That's Paul McCartney. We didn't speak to him. Quite funny, really, the respect you have for an idol like Paul McCartney. So I can say most of these people are very nice. Oh, and another one that's very nice is Nicholas Parsons. What a gentleman. I rang up Nicholas Parsons. I didn't know it was Nicholas Parsons. There was a lovely yellow Morris 1300. And I rang up and said, "I'd like to see your car." "Oh, of course, I will see you at 6 o'clock. And then my father said, "You can't afford that bloody car. Ring him up and tell him." So I said, "I'm very sorry, I can't afford the car. It's too much." "No problem at all. That's okay." He lived opposite my school, so his son went to my school. And then after that, years later, I went to a theatre performance at the local in the UCS theatre, and he was there looking very old because he was probably in his 80s. But I didn't speak to him, said that I nearly bought your car, went to see your car years ago, because he wouldn't remember it. He would have thought I'm an idiot. So he was sitting opposite with his friends. So at least I have spoken to him and seen him separately. But they're all really nice people, the ones that you see, except John Thompson, who I can say that because he was different. I've no idea who Carl Pilkington is, by the way. I still don't. I've never seen him in my life on television, but apparently he's very funny and very well known in his field. But he was filming outside my house for a day. Well, for half the day he was indoors in the house, and at night he was doing one scene where they did about 50 takes of him walking up to the door. Don't ask me why they needed them, but he did. So I filmed the whole thing and got 50,000 views or something, because he's apparently quite big in his own circles. You were on Sale of the Century? I don't believe it. I hope you got a film of it. I'd like to see that. So I've never spoken on mainstream television. I've done about 4 speaking parts as a hypnotist and on Sky, and I've done 3 or 4 little TV programs where I didn't speak, and once I had a crash helmet on because I was standing in for the star who couldn't ride a motorbike, so they got me in to ride the motorbike, and it conked out outside Shaftesbury Avenue fire station. The fireman came out and overtook me as I was stuck in the middle of the road. Luckily, they got 3/4 of the film done before I conked out, because when I watched the program, oh, will you send me a link? That would be great to see that. You never told me that. So anyway, I was up and down Shaftesbury Avenue with this Volkswagen Beetle, I think, with a camera on the roof. So they've got the sunroof, and the bloke sits out there with the camera pointing at you. And he was just coming in for the close-up when the bike broke down. So I think he must have got his close-up, because when we watched it, he appeared to just manage to close in, because even though I wasn't moving, he could still film it. So I think we just about got away with that. But she said, we'll have to do it again, she says. I said, well, I haven't got a proper motorbike. I can't remember why. What happened to my motorbike was probably having its indicator repaired or something. You had to go to Germany to get the bits. I borrowed my friend's Yamaha, which the reason it conked out was it was a 250 or something, and it was only about a 175, and they put a new engine on. It wasn't enough petrol to get it going, because he didn't have enough fuel to go for the bigger engine on a smaller bike. So I learned the hard way. So anyway, she turns up with her brother's BMW 750 or something. And I said to her, I would not drive somebody else's BMW 750 in the West End of London at night for the first time, because I might break it. And she said, I think you're probably right. He did live in Golders Green. He's a lovely bloke. That's the thing about all our local neighbours. Bill Oddie, I met him. I was in a shop and I said, would you like to go in front of me in the queue? He says, no, that's fine. The bloke from the Bill was in Brent Cross making jokes about his wife's makeup. She was sitting on a chair testing all the makeup, and he was cracking jokes about it. Quinlan, that's who he was. I don't know his real name. He was Officer PC Quinlan, the old original ones. Yeah, he lived in the park. The yellow car was outside his house. Didn't know until I rang up and he answered the phone. So yeah, that's my history. So the motorbike thing wasn't me. And when I was an extra for the BBC, because obviously they will borrow all the people that work for them as extras, we were unscripted. We went into Old Compton Street, into the record shop there that was open late at night. It could have been Virgin Records or HMV, one of the big shops. And they said, you and your friend just chat and look through the records together, which we did, but they never showed it, which was a great shame, because then I would have actually been seen in a proper big primetime BBC programme. But the other two that I do remember was when I was 11, we went on a TV course. We used to go to classes. PM Speech, bloody hilarious. Oh, that was you. That was fantastic. I'm learning that. Pussy Clark. Oh, the Pussy Clark. I thought there was somebody else saying, oh, it was Solly. It was you. Oh, that was fantastic. That was amazing. So anyway, I was, we used to go on the holiday studies. We learned things every time. We learned photography. We learned how to make a TV program, how to make glass. Great things. It was fascinating. I would make telephone calls on a switchboard. Get the not working. Anyway, so we went to a youth club, big youth club, and it was in the Oval, because this was a big London thing. So all the classes could be anywhere in London. The glass factory was in Wembley, so that wasn't so far. So we got on the train to Oval, and we had a big black and white trolley camera like they have in the studios, made a programme. They said, oh, we've got some little surprise for you at 5 o'clock. A TV crew from ITV turned up for the 6 o'clock Michael Barrett show, whatever it was, Nationwide or the ITV equivalent. And they filmed us for about half an hour talking about the programme we've made. And of course, I wasn't expecting it. So, they went round all of us asking us questions. They asked me some question. I thought, I dried up. I didn't know what to answer. So, of course, that wasn't in it. So you saw me and my friend Andrew there from school sitting there in an animated way, joining in, but they didn't hear us say anything. That was in black and white. Might have been in colour on other people's TVs, but not on my TV, because we didn't have a colour TV. It was 1971, I think it was a year before we got one. I used to go around my grandparents to watch theirs. And then 1974, which was in colour, my friend, who's a TV producer at Euston Towers, got me tickets with my other friend to watch a panel, not a panel show, it was a discussion, like Question Time. The bloody thing was about football. Oh my God, it was boring. So it was an hour talking about football. So I didn't put my hand up and ask any questions. It was dull. But they saw me because they panned around the audience. He saw me and my friend sitting in there with my big black pilot glasses on, because I couldn't see the stage properly otherwise, because I didn't wear them all the time there. But if I was going to a show, I would have to. So I saw myself sitting there in the audience when I got home. I went to Fulham. They played Derby County, but I was at the back. It was very nice when I went to the match, and I got home, and about an hour later, ITV showed all the highlights of the FA Cup and Fulham and Derby County, and then Fulham win the second division, Derby win the first division, and they won about 3-1, I think, or 3-2 Fulham. And there was one goal that they scored from almost the halfway line. I went to a United game once. I think they scored direct from a corner. They bent it in, scored from a corner, I seem to remember. But this, they discussed for about 10 minutes, was it deliberate or not? The guy was just in front of the centre circle, and he lobbed the ball over the goalkeeper. That was amazing. Because I was not exactly behind the goal, but I was roughly behind the goal, but further back, and saw it coming towards it. And it's plopped right in the goal. That's a Fulham goal, I seem to remember. So to watch the highlights the same night after you've been there. Oh, right. I thought it was a girl who sang My Girl Lollipop. No, clearly not. I never thought of it. My Boy Lollipop. It's My Boy Lollipop. It was a girl. I suppose some bloke might have sung it afterwards. That's Bad Manners, was it? I think if anybody big and fat did My Girl Lollipop, it must have been Bad Manners. And the funny thing was, that was Bust a Blood Vessel. 30 years ago, I just saw an advert. They're doing another show after lockdown. Didn't even know they were still going. So there you go. So yeah, I did that. And final one, I was at Brentford. Yeah, Bad Manners. Yeah, I worked it out. So I was at Brentford playing India. Now, back then, Sony TV, I don't know even if Sony TV was available in Britain, let alone on Sky. It was Indian. So they come over from India to film it. I don't know if it was live in India. It probably was. But I was literally about three, well, you can see it, I've got pictures of it, 3 people away from the goal on the side. Every time there was an attack, I would be right in the front of the screen. So I counted like 10 times I was in it. And then my favourite player, Lloyd Owusu, who was a goal-scoring machine, and he missed being in the Premier League by about 6 months, which was a great shame, because what happened was he moved from Reading to Brentford, because Reading were in the 3rd division, Brentford were in the 2nd division, and for some reason Brentford got promoted and he didn't go up with them, so I never know why. Now he's in Australia, because I know one of his friends, he's a football agent, so I passed his message on. He's very pleased. I sent him the picture of us. Anyway, big black guy, we're standing there, and he made a run towards the goal and couldn't stop. He got tackled or something. He couldn't stop, and he ran straight into the barrier and landed on top of me, or next to me, in front of me. And he somersaulted, so he was on his back. He went all the way over. and I think he did land more or less on top of me. So the woman next to him, he got one of his shoulders each and lifted him up. He stood up and climbed on, and all that was on film. So I gave it to a TV editor, and he made photos of it for me. So I've got the whole thing. So I rang up Sony TV and bought the entire video of the game, so you can see me in it regularly now. So that was one time I was on TV. I was actually on TV the most there, because I kept, being shown every time that there was a run on goal, because I was right next to the goal, so they had to zoom in on me because I was in shot with the goalkeeper. So that was a very good. I had no idea it was going to be filmed, so it's pure luck. So those were my little brushes with fame. Of course, you, Joe, working where you did, all you ever did was meet actors coming and going. Of course, I will tell the story, which is the greatest coincidence of all times. When I was in the ticket office, or next to the ticket office in South Hampstead, and one of the customers was being particularly difficult, and I said, "Oh, he was like the American in Fawlty Towers with the Waldorf salad." So 2 seconds later, I turned round, and who was standing next to me on the left? The American from Fawlty Towers with the Waldorf salad. I said, "Joe, how the hell did that happen?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "We were just talking about you." He says, "My God, how the hell do you remember that? That was years ago." I said, "That's one of the most famous sketches in history." And he thought we wouldn't have remembered it. He thought, "Oh, that was just a sketch he did years ago on television." But Fawlty Towers, every scene was absolute classic. He didn't really understand what a complete moment that was in comedy history. But what are the chances? I said, "Oh, he's just maybe like the Waldorf salad man," and the comes along and he's the Waldorf salad man coming to get his train ticket. That was amazing. He was such a nice bloke. He was so pleased that we liked him. He was very humble, because he didn't really think he was important. He just, just do my job, just acting. And of course, John Cleese and Connie Booth were always, all the Monty Python goodies team were in Golders Green and Hampstead and Cricklewood. So saw Terry Jones and Michael Palin in Belsize Park in their white clothes going to play squash together. Saw John Cleese in Kenwood. We sat on the next table to Connie Booth after he got divorced, having lunch in Hampstead. And Sting and his wife were sitting outside the Gayton Road Cafe. It turns out he lives there, which is why he was sitting outside the cafe, because that's where he lives. Not in the cafe, but in the road. And he's getting late. I'm losing track of all the different names. Marty Feldman, Peter Cook, all wandering around Hampstead. Some of my friends would go and speak to them. I'd never do it when they were in the street, because they've got their own lives. Elaine Page came out of Lewes when I was in there once. And Gordon Jackson used to have his morning coffee on the next table opposite us in Lindy's every morning. So we go to school break, and my school was above Lindy's. It was in the offices above Lindy's in Hampstead, so we go down for tea. It's the best coffee and cakes you get anywhere. Cream donut, jam donut, apple donut, Danish, every day with a coffee. And Gordon Jackson was on, you met David, so I never did. Gordon Jackson was on the next table every day. We never bothered him, and we had a waitress called Carol, who was like a blonde version of Barbara Windsor, little petite Cockney girl, absolutely gorgeous. And we were in love with her. All the boys were in love with Carol. She was such a nice woman. She always used to serve Gordon Jackson after us or before us. And he never spoke to anyone. He was always on his own. My father used to go to the Dome in Hampstead for breakfast next to Melvyn Bragg and his daughter regularly. Again, he never, I think, spoke to him, because you don't interfere. And that's right, the other one, Swiss Cottage. We went to see Jewish people have Chinese Christmas quite frequently. When people have Christmas dinner, we go for Chinese. So our friends that we usually had over for Christmas suggested we went for a Chinese, so we went to Swiss Cottage, and Alan Fluff Freeman and his friends were on the next table to us. But again, they were having their Christmas celebration. We were having ours. We did not disturb him, because we were just some unknown stranger on the next table. But it was nice to see him. What do you call it? What's his pot pickers? Hi there, pot pickers, on the next table to us. So that's an entire history. Of course, Topol from Fiddler on the Roof was my neighbour's friend, great friend. So my birthday, we all went to Fiddler on the Roof and met him afterwards. And then, because my neighbour and, well, her daughter and me were horse riding fanatics, we used to go horse riding together. And he came and sat and watched us one day with his little beret on. He was a very quiet chap in real life. He didn't say very much, very reserved, his foreign accent. And Leslie Crowther, he was a lovely bloke, because my neighbour was a PA. I never met Dennis Thatcher. He was a PA. She was a PA to the Stars. So we were around there one day. She says, "Oh, I've got someone to meet you." I came in, "Hi there, how are you? Leslie Crowther." My goodness, out of the blue, going to your friend's office and it's Leslie Crowther, just 2 doors away from my house. So as I say, in a stage, I want to be on the stage, not in the audience, and I want to be the person who is famous, that people say they met me, rather than, my grandpa was the exact opposite. He couldn't give a damn. So many people don't want to be famous, don't want to be known. I always want to be heard. That's why I do all this. I want to be heard and want to be famous, because that is my nature. It must have been something in a past life that guided me to want the fame. I haven't given up yet. I'm doing all I can within limits. I once sung rude songs at a comedy performance because my friend's sister was organising a comedy performance at you've met me, I know, in the Bull and Bush in Hampstead. So their cousin's a comedian, so he was on the beginning with Jenny Eclair. So the first half was Simon Godley, Jenny Eclair, and I was the interval. I played an upright piano, so I played the piano in the interval. And her brother came up, says, "Bloody main act couldn't turn up. I don't know what's happened to him." So I said, "Oh, that's lucky." He said, "You've got the keyboard there," because Simon had his Casio keyboard that he'd been using. So I said, "Oh, that's all right. I can do some rude songs," because it was a rude performance. So I thought, well, I know all my rude songs. I said, "I will save the day." So I'm a wanker, and it does me good like it bloody well should. I've farted, I've made a trouser cough. So they were all laughing away. So I'd saved the day, because I don't know what would have happened otherwise, because the second half, the bloke wasn't there. So I took over, and the next day my friend rang and says, "My mother is not speaking to you anymore." I said, "Why not?" She said, "She was disgusted with your rude language." Said all her friends were on the table with her, 30 of them, the whole family were on the table at the other side of the room from us. And apparently she didn't like people talking about farts and wankers. So about 6 months before she spoke to me again, because I'd embarrassed her, I said, Jenny Eclair was sitting there for 10 minutes talking about periods and tampons and things. Otherwise, and vaginas, and you're worried about farting and wanking. I mean, she wasn't. That's right. What do you do? That's my most popular video now. What do you do for that? And Mystery Hunters. That amazingly took off from James Max, because he said it on Radio London. I didn't know it, so I looked it up. And I said, "Nobody's sung it, so I'll do it." This is my most popular video. And you never know what people are going to get hooked on. Simplest things. So I've done loads of songs, and that one really hit a nerve with the British people, because it's true British humour. So I will never give up the entertainment, and all these live video and recorded video are my chance to keep my finger in. That's what gynecologists do after they retire. They keep their hand in, and when they're working, they're always looking up old friends. And woman comes up to the gynecologist and, "Do you know me?" He says, "No." And he says, "Okay, take your pants off." "Oh, yes, I know who you are, Mrs. Jones." She says, "Oh, now you know me. You never forget a face." He says, "Well, almost." Yeah. So it's true story. I only recognise them by their smile, but never mind. So there you are. That's see, when I started this, I didn't have a theme or anything. I was just going to say about things that I do as a video, the topics that I do, and I got into my little track, like my grandma gets into a track of how many famous people, when we were 10 or so, what scars have you got? I've got one down here and one over there and one over there. You grow out of that, how many scars have you got? And then it's how many famous people have you met? And unfortunately, that is my hobby. As I say, at my age, I want people to say that they've met me now, because you don't get any points for association unless you're in the newspapers that you happen to be with somebody famous. If you get off with them, it's different. I've never done that. I've tried, but the ones that I've been after have always been married. So I think even if they weren't married, I probably wouldn't have stood much of a chance. But who knows? You never know. I mean, I'm not particularly looking to marry an actress, but there are a few of them who I would have done if they were anything like they are on stage or on screen. And the ones who I've met have been even nicer in person than they were on television because they were being themselves. There's two or three of them. One I'm still in touch with. I won't mention because I'm still in touch with her. She's also married, but I could have met her a while ago, but I couldn't be bothered to go to Hatfield because I'm getting old, you see. She was doing a meet and greet in Hatfield Centre with a load of others. And it was odd because normally they do performances, but this was literally, they had a bunch of actors to meet their fans at the town hall or whatever it is, a civic centre, and they're all going to be there to chat with their fans. I was very tempted to go, but as I'd seen her once in real life and she looked very nice, and we chatted online afterwards, I thought, well, you know, it's not as if I haven't seen her in person. I wouldn't really have a chance of doing anything anyway if I did meet her. It would be, at least she could have met me. She's never seen me, which is true. So I was in a car when I saw her. I just saw her walking up the street as I was in the back of the car. I was like, oh, look who it is. So there you go. She does live in the centre of London, like she always has done. So that is my history of association with important people. There have been many more, but of course, going to the stage and watching them on, exactly, going to the stage and watching them on the stage, you know, everybody does that. So it counts in a way, but it's not the same as seeing them in their normal life or talking to them. As have most people in London, seen all the great people on the stage, including Carry On Films. I've been to their stage show, Monty Python on stage, Rowan Atkinson, Judi Dench at the Royal Shakespeare Company. We used to go there regularly, Stratford. And of course, Ron Moody was our friend. So he was the only person that we were really near to. Yeah, it was my parents' friend, but I knew him as well a bit. So that was one of the only people who we happened to know because they were all at university together in the perform. My mum was performing, my dad was studying, but he was performing with my mum because they were on the musical society, putting on musical performances every term. So they were all together in that group, so they knew each other from the equivalent of the Footlights. Of course, Ron Moody was an economist, but he was such a good actor, he didn't need to be an economist. But it's very nice when you're an economist, you don't need to do it because you're an actor. And if anyone doesn't know, he was a very fussy person coming to parts. He had this idea, oh, I can only take the best parts. You never guess what he turned down, Doctor Who. I mean, apart from Fagin, which thank God he did get one part, which was consummate with his talent because he was a great actor, and it would have been a shame that he didn't get some sort of acclaim. But can you imagine turning down Doctor Who? And when he got to his 80s and things, he said, I think I made a mistake. He said, I turned down Doctor Who. We all live and learn, you know. He should have done that. I mean, he would have been 10 times the star he was if he'd been Doctor Who. You know, I can imagine all the people that wished to be Doctor Who. Sylvester McCoy and Ron Moody would have made a perfect Doctor Who, and he turned it down. It just shows. You know, I was in the Toyah band, but I wasn't in the Toyah band because I was doing my A levels. That was my only unclaim to fame, because I got the audition because their guitarist was my neighbour, and he needed a piano player, keyboard player, so I auditioned for it and got through the audition and realised that I'd have to give up all my A levels to do it. I said, well, you know, I'm not going to do half a job for you and half a job for the A levels. It's all or nothing. I'm in the middle of my A levels. It's a great shame. So I could have been in the Toyah band, but they weren't famous then, you see. If they were already famous, I'd have joined them because they were already doing well. And done my A levels at another point, of course, when you're not at school, not used to it, and it'd been much harder work. I think I'd rather get the A levels because they are rather important because you couldn't do a degree without them. So I didn't want to mess up my entire education. But I think if they'd already been doing well and been on top of the pops and everything, I would have had to say yes, because it was no point joining them, having an audition if I wasn't prepared to do that. But we all have choices to make, and I was on. Well, she was on Johnny Walker a few years ago, and I sent the letter and said what happened, and he read it out. So whether she heard it or not, I don't know, because he'd already spoken to her, I think, and he read it out afterwards. I've sent her messages. She never writes back. It's a great shame. So I give up. She's on Instagram. So she had tea with my budgie was green and yellow, and her hair was exactly the same colour as my budgie. And it turned out that the reason Toya had coloured hair was not because she was an eccentric artist, but because she was a model for the hairdressing college, and they would test their hair colouring on her. So every few weeks she'd go there and they'd try a different hair colour, and she got so used to it, and everyone else got used to it, that she kept it in for her job. So for many years, she had to have funny coloured hair because that's what everyone expected. It was her trademark, but she would have been just as good without it. I liked her best in Brum anyway, because we all liked children's programmes. Couldn't see it, but she narrated it. All that was in Brum was a little car and a teddy bear or something. So that was fun. She's from Birmingham. Turned out she was already quite well known when I met her, but I didn't even realise it, because she was already an actress. Because I was thinking, musician, don't know, but she'd come to London to do acting and taken up the music additionally to it. But she was already quite a well-established actress, and I didn't realise. Of course, we had some from school, and none of them with their Harrison parents, Rex Harrison and Tom Finney and Tom Bell, etc. So many of their kids went on to be actors, but they never really made it, because the trouble with acting is if you're not a great actor, you'll get loads of parts if your parents are actors, because unlike a lawyer, you don't have to pass the exams. Acting is the only job in the world where you'll get it, not because of the talent, but because of who you're related to. It's just the way it's always been, probably always will be. So they all got jobs acting. They never got famous. They were in Grange Hill, two of them, the kids, but none of them made it to the top. So all the people at school with me, all their parents were the top British actors of their day, but the kids were just so never really made it. Whereas the intellectuals at my intellectual school, well, no, one of them wasn't even at school with me, it's just a friend, but they did very well as intellectuals. But only two of them made it to become famous, my friends and neighbours. Will Self, who is a great writer, and what I love about reading his books is I know everybody that he's writing about, because he writes about his mother and himself and Hampstead and all the places we grew up in, because he was around the corner from me. So we're the same age. He's a year younger than me, and he's written about himself and his life. So that's nice to see that. And Toby Young, who he hasn't forgotten me. I know some people forget me, come back after years. He didn't know what he said in his article. He says he's got so many friends, he doesn't need his old friends. I thought, you wait till all your new friends leave you, and he'd be too pleased to see you old friends. So I said, be nice to meet up. And he was in the West End in a performance. He says, well, come to the theatre and you watch me there. Well, I've got agoraphobia, so you won't be going to the West End, going to the theatre. I said, that's the one thing that's too much for me. I couldn't do it. It'd be he only lives a few miles from me now. He's got his modern life now. He doesn't need old farts like me from the past bothering him. He's a nice bloke, Toby Young. People are very rude about him because he's right wing, but he's very intelligent. And I'll tell you what, there isn't a word he says that's wrong. You might disagree with some of the things he says as an opinion, but he's absolutely on the button with his knowledge about everything. He's a very bright guy. I always give him credit because, well, I mean, I knew him when he was a kid, but he was always good fun even then. Because I was friends with his sister, but he always followed us. I never used to see them around here. I used to see them in Devon because they had a place in Devon, and so did we in the summer. So we used to spend our holidays together. My father used to take us all out in the car, and they'd all be fighting in the back seat and swearing, and he'd take no notice at all. He was very patient with them. He'd take us to the seaside and take us to the shops and anything else that was the local attractions and some of our other, because of course we were all too young to drive back then. We were 14 and 15 and 16, so we had to get a lift everywhere. My father was always the chauffeur for all my friends, did that from day one. Sometimes they would drop the F-bomb and he would say, absolutely, no, I never did, but they did. And he didn't even comment on it. He'd just carry on and ignore it, which was quite good, because I went to a school where people did swear rather a lot. And I always tried not to, because it used to get me into trouble when I was young. People would report it to my parents. Your son said something to my daughter. Don't you dare use that word in front of your friends. I had it knocked out of me at an early age, because I had a couple of friends that unfortunately taught me some bad language. I didn't realise how offensive it was, so I just come straight out with it and learnt the hard way. So that was, I've always tell the same stories, I think we all do, because we had the interesting bits. It's like soap opera, concertina's life into the interesting bits and leave out the dull bits. I'm just picking out the best bits of 60 years or so of my life and memory to spread around. And I told all the toilet ones last time, and somebody said to me, "Is all you talk about is toilets?" I said, well, it's something we all have in common and we all remember. And one thing about primary school, there's a lot of incontinence in primary school, and you'll never forget when somebody in the class has an accident, because it's a huge, you get hours and hours of maths and history, boring. Then somebody shits themselves, everyone falls about laughing. And, what do you remember? The maths or the history? No, I remember when somebody shit themselves in class. that's just what people remember. It's I say we are all animals underneath it, and we all do things like that. And they always say there, but for the grace of God go I. So it could have been you that did it. It was me that did it once. So I know just what it's like. And everyone took the mickey out of me at school the next day. Didn't do it in school. I did it out of school. But of course, the story didn't take very long to get back to school in 5 minutes, and the whole playground. I'm not going near him who poos. So I was being completely ostracised for a few days. And even the bloody dinner ladies, the attendants at break wouldn't go near me. I mean, God almighty, loads of kids did it. Wasn't that unusual? It was only 6. What do you expect? If I was 15 or something, it would be different. I was 6 years old, got to travel for not being able to wait till I got home. But sometimes it's not possible, especially when you're 6 years old. You haven't got so much control as you do when you're older. Your muscles aren't as well developed, and if it's got to go, it's got to go. And we all have wet farts from time to time. We've got diarrhea because the sphincter cannot hold back liquid. It can only hold back solid. So if you let one go and you have diarrhea, everything that is liquid in your lower bowel will come out at the same time. As I've discovered a few times, I had to go home wearing somebody's swimming trunks because that was all they had. I don't know why it was swimming trunks. I mean, he was a big fat chap. I suppose pants wouldn't fit me. We had this other pair of swimming trunks. So I came with this pair of red and white swimming trunks. I shit in my other pants. Sorry. Back to toilets. Always back to toilets. It's the refuge. It's the insurance policy of the comedian. When all is said and done, when you run out of material, talk about toilets, bodily functions, because we've all got them. God's idea of a joke is a fart, because even people with sensory problems can still be aware of them. I said that last time, didn't I? The old ones are the best. So there we are. I've been on for an hour and 15 minutes, about average for me. I don't know how many, I do know how many people watch these. It doesn't seem to be many people, like 10, 20 people watch these afterwards. So there aren't many people watch it live, but I do one or two things on my blog, because the old blog, you had to put a counter on for the blog and check the figures every week on the email or on the website. But now Blogger is very sophisticated, and it tells you how many views every post has had. So I can look down my list of posts, and the ones that are technical and really data driven purely for information, get loads of views because people use them as references. But all the ones where I'm teaching people things, I don't get more than like 20 or 30 hits. Very odd to go through the blog and for the YouTube. And, you know, you'll have 3 videos in a row on YouTube and one gets 5,000 hits and the other ones get 20. And I think, well, normally if I'm on somebody's YouTube channel and they've got a good video that I've watched, I'll see what else they've done. And, you know, if you're entertained by one video, presumably, you know, the others are similar enough. But no, it's completely random. Some of them are very similar, but one gets thousands of views and one gets tens of views. But it's posterity, because as long as they keep it here, and now Periscope's gone west, then I'll be doing more of these, because obviously it's just about all that's left. So if people get used to it, if people tweet it and things like they do on Periscope, because it was part of Twitter, then you'll get far more people realizing that we've all shifted over to YouTube Live, and all the old Periscope followers. I don't think you get notifications. You might get notifications. I don't know if you get YouTube notifications when somebody goes live, because I've never tried it. You always tell Periscope, because I used to get 6 or 7 people regularly come up the minute I came on, because they had a ping when I came on. It's all interesting stuff. Anyway, I've got a week off, at least. I think it might be 2 weeks off college now, because we're in between modules. So that's why I'm doing this, you see, because all the study pays off, and then you've got to keep yourself occupied doing the things you didn't have time to before. So I've got all my catching up to do with my entertainment without feeling guilty. So I've just been to Norfolk, which was a great time because it was sunny and warm. There was no traffic, and I got there in 1 hour and 45 minutes, the middle of Norfolk, which average speed of about 50 miles an hour, which isn't bad from here, because it was motorway the whole way, basically. Well, what counts for motorway in Norfolk is called a dual carriageway, but it works like a motorway, same speed limit most of the time. So it's a lovely road to Norfolk. It's the A11. If anyone in London or the East has nothing to do one day, I would recommend you go to Newmarket or Royston, pick up the A11 and go up to Norwich, because it's a very nice road and a very nice journey. You go through the forest, you go past the War Memorial, you go through Thetford, got all the army training camps out there. There's a museum there with tanks, tank parked outside the front. I think you can go inside, I'm not sure. Norwich is a very nice place compared to most, so I suppose about from North London, probably just over 2 hours to Norwich if you don't get any held up. So it's not too long to get there, and it's very different from London, so different scenery. Don't know about the beaches if you go east, because you turn right. If you go towards Newmarket, turn right, go to Bury St Edmunds and go up to Saxmundham or somewhere. I mean, Southwold, if I remember rightly, it's a long time ago, it's all pebbles. There's amber if you look closely enough. I couldn't find any. I don't think you get many decent sand beaches on the east because of the way the wind blows. I think you get the sand on the south and the stones on the east. I discovered a lovely sandy beach, Ramsgate, not long ago. Didn't have any swimming kit, so I dug holes instead, which was the only other thing you can do when you're on a sandy beach. So I put my hands in, made some nice holes in the sand, because that's what I used to do when I was a kid. No spade, it was nice soft sand. I took some pictures of myself on the self-timer on the beach. It was a lovely beach. It was deserted. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I didn't even remember they had such good beaches at Ramsgate. It was just as good as Bournemouth. It was absolutely about 3 people there. It was a nice day. And another one, hottest day of the year. Not New Haven, the next one. Anyway, next one next to New Haven, lovely sandy beach. People go to Brighton with all the stones and Worthing with lumps on the thing. You can't even sit there without hurting your backside. Just go down the road, got Bishopstone, the one beyond it. And anyway, it's a lovely beach. I didn't have my swimming things. I sat on the beach without my swimming things, but I couldn't go in the sea, which was an error. When I went to Southend, buggers charged to park on the seafront now, so didn't have any change. But it's a lovely sandy beach in Southend. It's bloody crowded, but if you go beyond Southend to Thorpe Bay and Shoebury-Ness, it's lovely there, not so many people. So that's what we used to go to, Thorpe Bay. If you go to Lee or Chalkwell, they've still got a nice beach there, but it is busy. I swam all the way from halfway up towards the pier and back once when I was at Southend. I think the sea gives you more floating power when you're not swimming. You can just float because it's the salt water, so I can swim further than I did normally. I haven't been in the sea for years, so I always forget to take my swimming things. I was going to France a couple of years ago and I was ill, so I couldn't, during the nights, I couldn't go. I had all my swimming things packed to go to Boulogne, I think, or the Touquet or Burke or somewhere. It's near there. I couldn't go, and then the next year when I was going to go instead, or the next month, that's right, next month you couldn't go because the trains were buckled. It was so hot for the whole month that you couldn't go on the trains because the railway buckled itself. So I couldn't get the train to France then. I rang them up and said, look on the website, all the red days that you can't run on the train. You go back to sleep, Joe, I'm going in a minute. I'm not going to sing a song now, no, do it next time. And so I didn't go to France that year because most of the trains, and my mum said, don't go to France on Saturday. So I went somewhere else. I went to Shropshire or somewhere. And I was in the car after an hour. They said, just an alert for anyone going on the Eurotunnel, there's a 3-hour delay at both ends. I thought my mum always gives me right advice because I didn't follow it once. I got stuck in the snow because it wasn't snowing. I was stuck in the snow for 7 hours getting home from Chorley Wood, which was a very silly thing to do, I know, but I didn't believe her because it didn't look like it was going to snow, and don't get much snow, and believe me, it snowed. All the traffic was snow. Like 7 hours from Chorley Wood, never again. So that was that story. And the second year, I couldn't go to France because we were locked down and we weren't allowed to go on international travel. And of course, this year it'll be exactly the same. And the few people who do use the Eurotunnel won't be able to do it because there are millions of people waiting for 2 years to go on the Eurotunnel. Will all be turning up there at once, and there'll probably be a queue for three trains before you get a train. You won't just be able to get on and go there. You'll be queuing up in a dirty grate, stored up, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3. You'll get there for tomorrow. You won't be able to come back till this the next train. You'll get there in time. Like we did when we went on it last time. We managed to get the last one back both times because we knew when it was. So we didn't get caught out. The first one was on strike. We had to move to Dunkirk because Calais was on strike. We sat on the train for 2 hours waiting to go somewhere else. They moved us from Amiens. We ended up in bloody Dunkirk 3 a.m. to go to Folkestone. That was fun. Never went on a ship after that. That was diabolical. I won't go into details, but it was diabolical. So anyway, that was completely off the thing. So after that, I used the hovercraft, and then they stopped the hovercraft. So I had to get the train instead because it costs a lot more, but you don't get the waves. It's a lot quicker than taking the ship anyway. So haven't been to France yet. Not going this year because we're still locked down. So Nottingham for me. So I've got a map, you see, and it's got a little red spot where I have been. It's green where I haven't been. So at the moment, the furthest place I can get to easily where I haven't been is Nottingham. So I'll be going to Nottingham next. Please God. And that is my current plan of action while I'm off college. So I hope people who watch this later will striptease. That's a good idea. I'll probably get banned. Everyone takes their kit off on Flickr. You do it on YouTube, you'll probably get arrested. So I will not be doing the full Monty on it. You go to bed anyway. I'll wind it up for now. I'll sing a song next time. Funnily enough, I've just got my spare guitar here and I need to put a string on it. I need to put a whole set of strings technically, but there's only one bust one. When I get that strung up, I'll do some more songs. I've done most of them already, so I only know that many. I'm on my way from misery to happiness today. I'm on my way from misery to happiness today. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on my way when I get to this world. I'm on my way when I go to the next world. When I go, for me, the days I wonder, I'll go to the world of yonder, something like that. And when I come, yeah, 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 yeah. So I normally use the lyrics. I've got them all printed out. Read them in front of me. I'm sitting on top of the world. I'm on my way. See, there's a little song. I won't take my cock out though. I think that's going a bit too far. I could be the singing flasher. I'm on my way. Get it out. Misery to happiness. Look at my balls. No, I wouldn't do that. You'd be famous for about 30 minutes, then you'd be in prison. And now YouTube from Wormwood Scrubs. Here I am, the flasher from Kingsbury. Took his dick out on television and got a 3-month sentence. Was it worth it? I don't think so. Right. Anyway, on that note, I will go to bed. I have a drink, and I can't eat cake anymore because my blood sugar has gone up. So that's good fun, isn't it? They said if I follow their diet, I'll get it down again. So that's one of them things. I'm not on the wacky backy. I'm a performer. I always say I never need to get drunk or stoned because I'm like that naturally. Even when I'm not on stage, I'm like that. But when I'm on stage, you have to perform, you see, because otherwise people won't watch you. But no, I've got pre-diabetes, so I've got to have a 3-month bloody diet now, and tablets, which I just took the first one to get the blood sugar down. So fingers crossed, if I can reverse it in 3 months, I'm not going to eat the cakes again because I'll get it again. But the good news is that it's all completely reversible if I behave myself. So I've got nuts now instead of cakes. I just had some walnuts. I had almonds yesterday, and you eat as many of them as you like because they don't put up your blood sugar. So I'm changing my diet now. So I will not be having I'm allowed like one biscuit and things. I'm only human, but it's like 10% of the normal amount of sort of things. I've got all these bloody 0 sugar drinks. See what they're like. Chemicals, and that's probably even worse for you, but who knows? Is that all water? So fruit juice is no good because it's full of sugar, so I can't drink that. Not much of it anyway, because that won't make any difference. So there you are, a bit of up-to-date information. Well, I'm allowed to eat them, but just only occasionally. That's the first thing the doctor said. You don't have to give up all that stuff, just, as an exception, not the rule. Not every day like I am now. Because when you get to 60, believe me, you eat badly for 20 or 30 years and you will get the problems. And it's lucky they do a test every year because they caught me and say, well, it's all right, we caught you. You'll be able to undo all the damage and won't get any lasting effects. So off we go. And I'll come to your cake when we're allowed out. So you're just doing that to annoy me, aren't you? Yes, never mind. You get another one when I come over. I promise I'll eat some of it. I'll make that the day where I'm allowed cake. Okay, right, I will definitely go now. You want to go to sleep. What do the second person is that's watching me? Steve watches me sometimes. Solly watches me sometimes. There's somebody called, what's she called? Who watched me on Periscope. She's my name. See, I'm hopeless with names. I remember her second name, but first name, not Faith, but something like that. She always found me on. I knew her already from Facebook, but I'll be interested to know. Oh, and Anna's there as well. She's another one that watches me because you met her on the first time I did this. So I wonder who the second person is, because unlike when I did Periscope, when nobody who I knew was on it, YouTube tends to be all my friends that come and watch me. So it's like Facebook. Well, I did Facebook Live when it used to be on. I get all my friends would be watching me play the piano, and then they stopped it for a year or two. Now they've started it again, so I'll do it again. Good night, Joe. Oh, it's your parrot. Okay, right. I'll remember that. Well, your parrot's got his own YouTube account. Very good idea. Right, I'll say goodbye now. An hour and a half. That's my time to say goodbye and get on with whatever I'm getting on with. Cat's gone to sleep now. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Say goodbye to the boys and girls, Sooty. Bye-bye. Sweet. Thank you and good night.